Ready? Calling Harry back to order.
Is this on? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize. Hello and good afternoon. Ms. Barrows,
Aloha.
please state your full name for the record.
My name is CarolAnn Barrows, C-A-R-O-L, capital A-N-N, B-A-R-R-O-W-S.
Thank you. Are you the president of participant Pono Power Coalition?
Yes, I am.
Are you the sponsor for responses to consumer advocates information requests number 9, 11, and 12?
Yes.
Are you the sponsor for responses to Maui Electric's information requests 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16?
Yes.
And Maui Electric supplemental information response number 15?
Yes.
And the sponsor for the response to Innergex's information response number 1, 6, 7, 8, and 9?
Yes.
Can you briefly summarize your concerns with respect to native plant impacts?
That Innergex, to my knowledge, is not taking any measures whatsoever to protect the native species, nor to thoroughly evaluate. We haven't heard any environmental studies regarding the native species on site.
Can you summarize your concerns with respect to water runoff?
I live right next to the site. And during rainstorms, the gulches overrun, the land floods. And right now there's buffalo grass and kiawe trees and some native species that protect the land and at least slow down the runoff. And my concern is that with 200 acres of glass and denuded compacted soil, that will vastly increase the amount of runoff from the site, not only to our properties, but through the gulches down to the ocean, which would increase the pollution and the brown water, which would severely impact the marine life.
Can you summarize your concerns with respect to Innergex's community outreach attempts or non-attempts?
I found it grossly inadequate. I participated in their first public hearing, and I heard about it from a neighbor who heard about it from the Maui Meadows Neighborhood Association. And I heard about it word of mouth, and I live right there. There was no notification of my property adjacent to it of this public meeting, which was the 30th of October. So I went, and that's when I say I stepped through the looking glass, because I was asking clear questions and getting gobbledygook back. There were 3 consultants who did not know the answers to my relatively uneducated questions. I didn't know anything about this project. So that was how I began to interact with Innergex. And I had a personal meeting with them, and I attended the Kula meeting, and I had many emails. And the response to my grave concerns were, we'll deal with it later during permitting. And that's not good enough. We need to know the impacts of this proposal now.
And just for the benefit of the commissioners who are not from Maui, how long does it take to drive from your house to where the Kula Community Association met?
It takes close to an hour.
Can you summarize your concerns with respect to future permitting?
That they're putting off giving us the vital information that we need to know whether or not this project is safe. They're putting it off to unknown times for permits that we don't even know have any public engagement. So that's not good enough. We and the PUC need to know now what the adverse impacts of this huge land change would be.
Can you summarize your concerns with respect to Innergex's inexperience?
Yes,
About doing these kinds of projects?
yes.
Yeah. It's in response to
Innergex,
Miko's information request number 3.
I believe Innergex has 7 or 8 solar projects that they both built any solar projects, nor connected to an electric company. And I believe all but one were purchased in the last half of 2018. But that gravely concerns me that something of this magnitude would be managed by people that have never done it before from a different country.
Can you summarize your concerns with respect to electric rates and the 25-year length of the contract, term of the contract?
Yes. Technology is changing and evolving so rapidly in this field. And to be stuck with a 25-year contract is basically dinosaur thinking, that in 5 years, there's going to be better technology. In 10 years, this will be a stranded asset. I believe it will be. And also, consumer-driven market where we're going to want to have our own wind generators and our own solar on our homes is, it's not, this kind of projection is not based on market trends. And therefore, I believe the ratepayer will not be served.
Okay. Can you describe, or can you summarize your concerns with respect to the so-called community benefits package?
It's mythical. And when I heard Ms. Mancinelli say, well, we're
I
considering,
just want you to
my concerns?
summarize the concerns that you described in your testimony and the responses to the information requests.
that there is no evidence of one. And also that the company gets to decide, rather than the community, what we actually need and what would benefit us.
And can you summarize your concerns with respect to potential for heat island effects?
Yes. One of the reasons we live there is because it's cooler up there than it is closer to the ocean. And there's this beautiful breeze that comes off Haleakala. And I've studied heat island effect and, desktop studying. And there's a very real risk that the temperature from an installation of this size would raise the temperature 5 degrees. That would interfere with the precipitation and also our temperatures long term.
And it's correct that it was your testimony that your concerns were not allayed by the Pearson memo on the heat island effects?
Exactly.
And can you summarize your concerns, summarize your testimony regarding your concerns with dust?
Dust is not just an inconvenience, it's actually a health hazard. And right now, we have very little dust up there, unlike other places in Kihei, because the ranch land is covered with buffalo grass and kiawe trees and native vegetation and vili trees. When that's all denuded, then dust everywhere, and not just during construction. I have visited the 3 solar power projects on Hawai'i that Miko owns, and there's no vegetation under any of them. There's no vegetation maintained, it's just dusty. So I'm confident that is what will happen behind my home too. And dust is also, it damages property. It's not just a health hazard or an inconvenience.
Can you summarize your concerns with respect to noise impacts?
Yes. Noise also, I think it was in 1968 that the Surgeon General said that noise is a health hazard. It's not an inconvenience. So the noise from a year of construction, of blowing up the earth, they say they're not going to grub and grade, or they'll do a little tiny bit, but that's specious. We don't know that for fact.
Thank you. We have no further questions.
Thank you.
Electric.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Barrows,
Aloha.
aloha. I'd like to ask you, how many members does Pono Power Coalition have?
Over 1,000.
And how do you define membership?
An interest.
But I'd say, how do
And
you,
also giving us their name,
so this was,
saying that they want to be a member.
so you're, in terms of, you're talking about the change.org petition that was,
In part,
okay. So what other means have you determined what the membership of this body is?
there are also people that donate
About 1,000?
money and time.
Thank you. Please let me know if you want to finish your question. We need to make sure that we're not talking over each other as much,
Excuse me.
like that, for example, right there, as much as possible. Thank you. So have all of these 1,000 people that Pono Power asserts are members attended any meetings of any kind?
Some of them have.
Okay, how many of them?
I don't have that number.
Has Pono Power ever had a meeting that had more than 100 people at it?
No.
Okay. What about more than 50 people?
We have online meetings, and it's hard to know how many people attend those.
Has Pono Power done anything to confirm that all of the people who signed up are different people and not just, it's theoretically possible they could just be the same people with multiple email addresses, correct?
Oh, well, I guess I'm assuming goodwill and honesty.
Okay.
So we haven't done that evaluation.
Okay. And do you know whether all of these individuals that Pono Power claims to have in its membership are all residents in the surrounding area of the proposed project?
No.
Do you know how many of them or a relative percentage of them are?
I haven't done an evaluation.
Sure. We would like to raise an objection and concern that Pono Power Coalition has both a First Amendment right under the federal constitution and a right under the state constitution to privacy. And I just want to state as an objection to questions that seek to infringe on that right, that the parties and participants in this case do not have the right to invade the association, the freedom of association of Pono Power Coalition, and there's clear case law on that. So I just want to state that I object to the question that it's outside of the scope of what's allowed to be asked.
And I'll note, I mean, if you'd like me to address, Chair, I'll note that I'm not asking any individual identity questions. I'm just trying to get a sense of, Pono Power has asserted that it acts on behalf of a significant number of residents or affected stakeholders. I'm trying to get a sense of what the scope of that representation is, in part for the commission to determine how much weight to give any one entity's opinion. So I think that's totally within the issue, to the extent that it goes to the representations made as to the size of the organization, to find out what exactly the organization, who they actually represent and who actually is a member.
We'll allow the question. Please proceed.
Thank you. Since I don't think I had a pending question, I'll just move on to the next thing anyway. Did you, as part of the process of being an intervener into this docket, did you send out your testimony and any IR responses to all of the 1,000 members or so that Pono Power asserts is part of its membership body for review prior to submitting them?
No.
Okay. So
I was
Go ahead, go ahead.
I was representing the members and working closely with our attorneys, and it was more efficient and effective to have one person working with our attorneys.
So as you sit here today, you don't know whether the 1,000 people who have done some step to affirmatively indicate that they're supportive of your position that you count as your membership actually supported the positions taken by Pono Power in this document.
I kept the membership abreast on a regular basis about what we were doing, not the nitty-gritty of all of the testimony that was filed, and no one objected. So I guess I have to take that as support.
When you say you kept them abreast, you're talking about summary emails that you sent out to some sort of listserv, or?
I sent updates. I also sent regular emails to our donors, and through Nextdoor, which is an online neighborhood blog, if you will, I made regular updates as well.
Have you reviewed all the public comments in this docket?
I have.
Okay, and you would agree that they're not all in opposition to the project?
I would agree that there are some supporters.
Okay. So you would agree that not all the comments are in opposition to the project?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, a number of Maui Meadows residents submitted testimony that they not only do support the project, but they disagree with Pono Power's assertion that it speaks on behalf of the residents of Maui Meadows, correct?
I don't recall that specific email, and we never asserted that we speak for everyone in Maui Meadows, ever, not once.
In response to MECO PPC IR2, which I'll give you a second to find that if you'd like.
Can I have some help,
It's
Bianca? I mean, because of my hand.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. In the response, PPC states that representatives went door to door along Kumulani Street and spoke with all but 4 of the residents, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Was that you? Were you the representative that went along Kumulani Street?
there were 3 of us.
How many residents are there on Kumulani Street that can actually see the project from their residence?
I believe there are 24.
And is that based upon your review of the projected sight lines that were submitted by Paiahu Solar? Or how are you determining which houses can actually see the development and which can't?
We had our own study done that was submitted as part of our motion to participate. And I actually looked at Google and saw how many homes were facing the site.
Okay. And so you spoke with 20 of the 24 individuals?
No, we spoke with residents on both sides of Kumulani because those were the people that would be most adversely affected, and especially by reduction in the value of their homes.
You mentioned earlier that some of the residents of Maui Meadows may want to install their own solar or wind projects on their own property, correct?
Yes,
Okay. So I assume it's correct to say that some of the current residents of Maui Meadows have existing solar arrays installed on their people who are on Kumulani Drive.
well, I know of 3 people. I mean, I don't look at people's roofs, but I know I and my 2 neighbors
Was
have
there,
some solar.
did PPC take any position regarding the installation of solar panels within the residential community?
No.
Does Maui Meadows have any restriction on the use of solar panels or installation of solar panels as part of the residential community?
I'm not aware of that.
In response to Paiahu PPC IR 6A and I'll just go ahead and get to
Well, I
that.
can remember what I said, I think.
Okay.
If I have trouble, I'll
Okay.
ask for help.
So you were asked about an effort that PPC undertook to have the members of PPC boycott an open house that was being held by Paiahu Solar.
Yes,
Do you recall that?
Mhm.
Yes. Yes?
yes,
Okay, sorry for the,
Yes.
doesn't work for the court.
yes, I'm aware of that.
And your response in Paiahu PPC IR 6A was that the open house was not an opportunity for Paiahu Solar to listen to community concerns. Do you recall saying words to that effect?
Yes,
So did you actually go to the open house?
I did not attend the open house because we had made a motion to intervene or participate in a contested case hearing. And so that's where I was standing.
Did you, so I presume if you weren't there, you didn't try to ask questions, provide your opinions, your comments, or your concerns to Paiahu Solar in that meeting?
I'd already done that. So no, I didn't in that. I wasn't going to repeat and be ignored again.
And I take it also that Paiahu Solar didn't refuse to listen to any of your opinions, comments, or concerns? at
No,
that
they'd
time?
done that previously.
At the time of your boycott announcement, the open house hadn't occurred, correct?
Correct.
So how could you possibly know what was going to occur in making your statement that the open house was not an opportunity to listen to community concerns? Essentially, you prejudged that situation and decided that regardless of what actually happened there, you thought you knew what was going to happen, correct?
I didn't announce a boycott. One of the neighbors posted something on Nextdoor encouraging people to go. So in my comments, I said, don't waste your time. These people aren't going to listen to you, because that had been my experience and the experience of all my neighbors. So that's why I made that statement. And then
Oh, sure, go ahead.
also, then they could double count the amount of people that had attended, because they're not looking at faces and saying, oh, that person was here before. So I just saw it as, I didn't see it as genuine public engagement. I just saw it as another opportunity for marketing,
Okay. But you made that determination before you'd actually participated.
based on experience.
And that, so as I understand it, what you're saying is it was part of a strategy that you were suggesting to try to make the appearance of the community outreach program look worse by not providing membership or attendance at the meetings, right?
Oh, no, that's not true at all.
So what was the point about not allowing people to be determined to have attended a meeting? What
Oh,
was the point
people
of
are
that?
free to go wherever they want. I was saying that you'll be wasting your time. And I care about my time. I care about my neighbor's time. And given my experience with the Innergex team that was promoting their project, is that they were just promoting their project. And I didn't want people to waste their time.
Okay, I'm not
But they were
talking,
free to.
I'm not talking about that, and obviously everybody's free to do what they want to do. I'm
Right.
not talking about your statement that you said that you wanted to make sure that they weren't counted as attending the meeting. The reason you didn't want them counted as attending the meeting was because it would make it seem like the community outreach program was less effective, correct?
I didn't want them wasting their time, and I didn't want them counted.
And that was the reason.
Yes.
So in that situation, your mind was made up already regarding your feelings about the project and the development, correct?
I think you understand that we went through a huge effort, including fundraising, in order to participate in this contested case hearing. This is not something we woke up in the morning and said we wanted to do. And so we were devoted to participating in this hearing in order to demonstrate that Innergex was failing in their duty to follow the conditions of the RFP. So going to a public house was not in line with us making a clear stand for right action.
And so it's your position that one more meeting, 5 more meetings, 10 more meetings wouldn't matter.
Not after we filed our motion for a contested case hearing. It was too late. They had their chance.
So there's nothing that could be done on a going forward basis either.
Well, right now legally, no, because this is before the PUC, and it doesn't matter if Innergex meets with people every day until Christmas or until next year. That is not of any value to this hearing.
In response to the same IR that we were just discussing, you mentioned that one of the options that was not considered was, quote, relocation to another island. Was that something that Pono Power was suggesting, was that this project should be relocated to another island?
Upon reflection, there is a mandate to become energy independent by 2045. So I don't know all the numbers because I don't work for MECO, but we don't right now need energy for another 7,500 homes. We don't have that need right now. So why is MECO planning for it? Why are we asked to sacrifice the quality of our lives and the future health of our INA so that speculative homes can be energized? If there's a certain amount of energy from the state order for more renewables, that could certainly be met out in the middle of nowhere on the Big Island, maybe. I mean, I'm not a planner, but why do you have to put it right next to people's houses?
So, well, right now, there's no way to connect the Big Island to Maui
Right,
for energy sources. You would agree with that?
Right, but Maui doesn't need right now 7,500 homes worth of energy that this project allegedly would provide.
But you would agree that Maui does have an obligation to obtain 100% of its renewable energy, or 100% of its energy from renewable sources by 2045.
Yes, and that's 25 years. That's a lot of time.
Okay, so to follow up on your prior statement, you're not necessarily opposed to the construction of a project of the similar type as is being proposed by Paiahu. You just don't want it in your neighborhood.
Correct, it should be in an industrial area.
But somewhere on Maui. Or maybe the Big Island.
Or I don't even know if it needs to be built now.
Okay.
I'm not convinced it needs to be built now.
So in regard to, one of the things you mentioned was that you thought that this was, I think, a sunken asset at some point, and that perhaps that the appropriate approach would be to allow more residents to build wind or solar on their own home, correct?
That wasn't part of my earlier testimony. I was kind of talking on, but there is a very real concern of a stranded asset. And the problem with the 25-year contract is MECO may determine that this form of generation is no longer what is needed. And so then the ratepayers are stuck paying for it for 25 years.
Okay.
And that's not, oh no.
Thank you. My question regarding that was actually, I was going to ask you how that would impact Maui residents who either can't install their own windmills or solar panels, either because they live in an apartment or because they simply just don't have the money to afford that type of technology. At some point, don't we need utility scale projects like this to accommodate some of the less fortunate members of Maui?
Well, now you're getting into a really interesting area that I'm fascinated with, and that's that the very idea of these huge industrial scale installations, which are going to mar the beauty of our beloved Hawai'i, are not necessary. That micro and nanogrids and distributed energy is what's up ahead for us in the future. And that means putting them on people's roofs. In fact, right now on the island of Oahu, they finally figured out we don't have any more land. And they're Kiko's looking at putting solar on people's roofs, So we have lots of roofs here. And that's in my opinion, that's a better way for us to be looking to meet our renewable energy mandate. It's not destroying the land.
Have you studied whether or not the renewable portfolio standard requirements could be met entirely with rooftop solar?
No.
I'd like to talk about the exhibits that you sponsored. One of them was designated as PPC Exhibit 01, which was what's been called the anonymous note. That's a handwritten note or a picture of a handwritten note, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Were you the author of that note?
No.
Okay. You also sponsored a nature.com article and a report related to the parcel formerly known as Wailea 670. Did you have any involvement in the creation of those documents?
No.
Okay. I don't have anything further.
No problems.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Barrows.
Aloha.
Hello.
No, I can't see you.
Okay.
See your face, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Knox.
You're welcome.
Just refocusing for a moment on the issues in this proceeding. I assume as someone who's involved, obviously, with the contested case proceeding, that you're aware of issues 1 and issues 1A that the commission has identified.
Yes.
Okay. And I'll read, little parts of that, and you can see if it sounds familiar. And if not, we can pause. But issue 1 requires that there be consideration of the state's reliance on fossil fuels in several different ways, one of which is price volatility. Another is the export of funds for fuel imports. Another one is fuel reliability risk. And then the final is greenhouse gas emissions. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Commission 1A, okay. So if this project goes forward, you would agree, I think, that it would reduce reliance on fossil fuels, correct?
Yes.
And also it would reduce exposure to fossil fuel price volatility. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And same, for similar reasons, it would reduce the export of funds for fuel imports. The same reasoning would apply with regard to the
Well,
basic
I'm not
benefit.
sure because if a foreign nation builds this project, then I believe that funds will be exported to that nation for the generation of this electricity.
Okay, but just to be clear, the issue 1A refers to funds for fuel imports. So,
Thank you.
and then again, for similar rationale would apply to that the project would reduce the fuel supply reliability risk. It's solar energy, so it would be more reliable. And then also, is it Pono Power Coalition's understanding and position that the project would also reduce greenhouse gas emissions based on the reports that have been submitted and so forth?
It would reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but not to the effect that has been declared.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
It would reduce greenhouse gas effects, but I don't believe there's been an adequate analysis to define the actual benefit.
Okay, so just to clarify, you agree, you have some concerns, it sounds like, but you would agree that it would reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you. Okay, turning to another topic you touched upon a moment ago. Trying to just kind of hone in and make sure we have a clear understanding of the sort of view impacts or potential visual impacts of the project. And so I just kind of would like to walk through that. I think you said a moment ago that there are approximately 20 houses, was it, or maybe a few?
24.
24 that may potentially have a view of the project when completed. These are along Kumulani Drive, is that correct?
Yes, I didn't say may, I say will.
Will, okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I want to get, actually, that's exactly what I would like to get into here. So how is it that, have you had access to the first floor, second floor, or other portions of any of the residences along any of those 24 residences in order to confirm or evaluate whether it's likely that there would or would not be a view of the project?
Yes, in our contested case, petition, the declaration of my neighbor, Todd LeGrande, was included. And he had a photographer come out and take photos from his deck and from his second floor and from the deck on top of his home. And then simulated solar panels at a distance of 270 feet were simulated into those photos, and we entered those into the record.
Thank you. But just to maybe simplify this somewhat, is it your testimony that all 24 of the homes will have a view, or is it correct to say that you're not sure really which of the 24?
I'm confident that all 24 will have a view.
Okay, and just if I may ask, what is the basis for that statement?
I live there.
And
I walk there.
Of
I
course.
live there. That's my home.
I understand. What I meant, and I apologize, I should be more specific. Have you had access to the interiors of the residences in order to determine, or even to the yards, to determine whether there would or would not be a view from the first floor, second floor, or otherwise?
I've had access to the interior and the yards of 6 of my neighbors' homes,
Thank you. So
which I think
6,
is a good representative sample.
oh, thank you very much. 6 of the 24, but not all 24. Thank you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then with regard to potential view impacts that would be experienced by any homes that, well, let me start over. Is it correct that there are no other houses within Maui Meadows that would have any view of the project whatsoever?
I don't know.
Okay. You were saying a moment ago that you're a resident and you are very familiar with the neighborhood, the topography in particular, the steepness of the slope, the views from one part of the Kumulani Drive to another, but you can't testify as to whether there would be any view impacts from any of the other homes that are not located along Kumulani Drive.
Across the street on Kumulani, those houses are not included in the 24 that I mentioned. The 24 are right up against the ranch land. So across the street, some of those homes are quite tall. So my guess, and it's just a guess, is that from the 3rd floor or the upper decks, they also would have the view of the ranch land and Haleakala marred by the panels. But I don't have actual evidence, and I haven't been in any but one home.
So if you were to, if we were to take into consideration the 6 of the 24 or other, and possibly others, what is your estimate of the total number of individuals that may have some sort of ability to have a view of the project from the Maui Meadows residential subdivision? Would we say under 50?
No, I believe it's more than 50 because many of those homes have families. And also, I think we need to be careful not to say, well, it's only 50 people. You know, like, well, we don't matter. That's 50 people. It's our homes. It's where we live.
Thank you. So it's possible as well, I think you would agree, that some who have a view of the project may view it positively. There may be a positive association insofar as it's a symbol of Hawaii's clean energy future.
Oh, there isn't a single person up there, I'm confident, that would have that attitude.
And are you aware of a recent public comment that was submitted that stated that only a few houses would be affected with regard to visual impacts?
That isn't true. Yes, I'm aware of it, and it simply is not true.
Okay, thank you.
This is the size of 117 football fields.
So with regard to some of the concerns that have been identified by Pono Power Coalition, one of the concerns that was raised was has been exterior lighting of the project. And are you aware that there, I believe you might be aware from having attended this hearing, that there's testimony now that it would be essentially one security light about 270 feet away from the neighborhood, and it would be motion detector, it would be positioned downward or shielded and so forth. Does that allay the concern of Pono Power Coalition with regard to project exterior lighting?
No.
And can you explain why not?
I don't trust anything Innergex says. They have said all kinds of things, and they're willing to say all kinds of things. And these panels are extremely valuable, and they are at risk of being stolen. And to think that there won't be any security lights doesn't make common sense to me.
A moment ago, we talked about the boycott, and I believe you testified that it was an exchange you had with regard to another community member possibly. And the question I have for you is to your knowledge, was there also a statement posted on the change.org or other website for Pono Power Coalition encouraging people to boycott those meetings? In other words, it wasn't just a one-on-one communication, it was more of a public statement urging.
No, I'm sorry, but I truly don't recall. And perhaps I did, but I don't recall doing that. I don't recall doing that. I believe it was just an exchange. I can't imagine doing that. Anyway, I don't recall doing that. I just remember stating on the Nextdoor site that please don't waste your time, but I don't think I went to the effort to bar it or anything.
So with regard to the surface water concerns that you have identified, is it possible that if the project goes forward and drainage plans are implemented, could that actually result in an improvement to the overall management of surface water runoff that could impact the Maui Meadows neighborhood? Because there would be the installation of various best management practices and so forth.
That's speculative and it's in the future, so who knows? The reason we're here is because Innergex has not provided us with that important information.
Okay, you're aware, as a representative of Pono Power Coalition who is actively involved obviously in the issue, you're aware that the Hawai'i Solar has provided various documents and information relating to surface water runoff issues. I assume.
Can you identify those?
Okay. Turning to the question about the issues about moving the project to a land that's zoned industrial, would you agree that if industrial zoned land is more valuable, then it would be higher cost, and that would result in a higher cost to everyone from the project? It would be, in other words, the project would be more costly, and that would be passed on to Maui Electric customers?
I don't know that industrial land is more expensive.
Okay. No further questions, Chair.
Commissioner Council,
No questions.
Commissioner Sunstein,
No questions.
Modern. No questions for me. Witness can be excused. That brings the cross-examination to a close here. As we stated in the pre-hearing order, there'll be no closing arguments. Instead, as set forth, the parties and participants may file post-hearing briefs subject to the applicable page limit of 20 pages, excluding any exhibits or attachments, which will be due 2 weeks after the hearing transcript is completed and filed with the commission. The commission will notify the parties and participants when the hearing transcript has been filed for the purposes of establishing a filing deadline for the post-hearing briefs. Thank you for everyone's participation. Oh,
Sorry, Real, just to clarify the statement that you just made, any exhibits or attachments would need to be something that's already in the record, correct? Not new evidence or new documents that would be filed and attached to the closing brief.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Any other questions? Yeah. The hearing's adjourned.
I'll never wear another bow tie to
Okay, you can vote.
Don't you get bored over there.
Yeah, you can go. Hey, Jeff, sorry.
You know, Mr. Potter too.
Wow, yeah, that's nice. What's your name? Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Thank you. Next week. Oh, you're only one day.
Good seeing again.
So are you back?
No, I'm a consultant. I'm actually representing Innergex.
Are you still working in front of the old box?
No, I left. Left last year. Became a consultant. Helping them, helping a couple others. I get to take decisions. Yeah. I like it. Hey, okay. I'll get you. Hi. Catch you. Can I catch you?
Yeah.